Hey there, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of That's How We Roll, a podcast where I talk with motivating and inspiring women who are professionals, entrepreneurs, organization leaders, artists, and so much more. This week's guest is award-winning journalist and composer Charu Suri. Charu has been playing the piano since the age of 5 and performing since the age of 9. She is the first Indian-born jazz composer to premiere work at Carnegie Hall. Her latest album, Book of Ragas, Volume 2, debuted on August 6th. Charu received 6 nominations in the International Singer-Songwriters Association, aka ISSA, Awards in 2021 and won a silver for Band Single of the Year for her original song, Bluesy. In April, she became Jazz Artist of the Month and won a gold record from ISSA. She's a voting member of the GRAMMYs Recording Academy. During the pandemic, Charu uploaded several jazz performances on her social media channels for joy and inspiration, which we all needed so desperately. So check out her social media channels to listen. So let's find out more about Charu and all her accomplishments and about her upcoming performance at the famed Carnegie Hall coming in November. Join me in welcoming Charu Suri, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Avis.
Congratulations on your accomplishments. Let's talk about your journey to Carnegie Hall first. But I also want you to explain to everyone what raga is and what it means.
Thank you so much, Avis, for having me. And it's so interesting that you asked that because I was having this very conversation yesterday at a sitar recital of my friend who's also a raga expert. A raga is an Indian modal scale. There are hundreds of ragas, and they have a certain mood, a presence supposed to be played at a certain time of day. They also have a different ascending pattern and a descending pattern. So unlike a Western scale, which has pretty much a fixed ascending and descending, which is the same, a raga has different patterns, up, ascending and descending. And it really, if you listen to it and improvisations of Indian ragas in music, you really feel that it builds and establishes a mood, a calm, or a sense of place in such a beautiful way. So those are the scales that I grew up listening to and singing when I was a child, in addition to my career as a Western classical concert pianist.
How old were you when you moved here to the United States?
I was 16 when I moved here, and I started learning music there when I was 5. So I was a classically trained concert pianist. So I was playing everything from Mozart to Schubert to Beethoven from when I was 9 years old, performing in various concert halls. And I also simultaneously was learning Indian music. So I grew up with a hybrid of systems in my ear all the time.
So let's talk about Carnegie Hall. So you started playing the piano very young. Did you ever think that you'd be playing at Carnegie Hall?
Never in a million years. It was my dream. It was my absolute dream. When I was a child, I would be like, oh my God, how amazing would it be to play at like Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall? And funnily enough, I'm going to get a chance to play at Lincoln Center in December too. So this has been an amazing year of performing opportunities. But Carnegie Hall is an entire evening show devoted to my work, and it was just amazing to perform there for the first time in December 2019, and this is a second performance. And I became the first Indian-born jazz artist to perform at Carnegie Hall too. So it's been a dream come true, but it's also been an inspiring one because it's given me confidence and also joy to sort of inspire people, especially female composers and pianists. They're emerging in India to do the same.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, the first time that you got a call from your manager, your publicist that says that you were playing at Carnegie Hall, how was that experience? Like, what were you thinking? Did you think that they called the wrong number? Are they talking about me? Did you mean to call me? Like, what were you thinking?
It was amazing to hear that. I actually contacted them directly, and then they said yes. I had to apply for everything, and you obviously give them my credentials. But then we were just working to find a date for the show. and it was just absolutely surreal. I remember just not feeling that it was real, that it was, sort of a little bit in the twilight zone. And I come from a middle class family in India, and where we, saved every penny and every little amount we could for education and opportunities. Um, and it was just amazing for my parents even to hear the news that all those lessons paid off
I
in
know, right?
some way, shape, or form, right? That's just great.
So they were probably just as happy as you were and
Oh yes,
excited because you were like, "Oh, she made it. She's in Carnegie Hall."
yeah. I think they were absolutely delighted and super super happy. So, but I think it comes with a price. It's been a lot of work and a lot of behind the
Hmm.
scenes. And sometimes, when my friends ask me, why don't you come hang out at parties and why don't you do this, and I'm like, because I'm busy practicing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's and then you get labeled as like, oh my god, she's a loner, she's a solo kid. I'm like, no, I just found a great passion for what I do. And so everything comes with a price tag, right? So
Yeah, exactly. And now those friends are looking at you like, "Oh, see, that's why she didn't come out and
yeah,
play
now they're
with us
buying
because she."
tickets for my show. Which is good.
The first time that I heard your music, I heard you playing outside in an outdoor concert in Hudson County.
Right, that's
And
right.
yeah, and I had never heard your music before,
Right.
and I mean I loved it. And so I was so glad to even, and I was like, she played at Carnegie Hall because you gave me your card.
That's
And
right.
I was like, wow, that's so great. She played at Carnegie Hall. Wow. So I really want to go to the concert, to the evening of music. So it's going to be like a couple of hours. Is that what it is?
Yes, it's going to be an hour and a half of uninterrupted performance, and then we're going to have an after party afterwards. But it's on November 13th, which is a Saturday, at Weil Recital Hall, and tickets are available online. If you just Google Carnegie Hall, Charu Suri, you should be able to find them. And it's going to be an evening of both standards. We have some standards in there, but mostly music, songbook, and raga jazz original pieces, which are very new, very interesting, very different. My second album has been submitted to the Grammys this year for consideration in the jazz field, and I've been getting so much amazing feedback. Like, it's been absolutely fantastic feedback I'm getting from people who are listening on the fusion of Indian ragas, jazz, and Sufi singing, which has really never been recorded and done in this way before. And so that's the great feedback I'm getting. So at the hall, you'll be able to see the entire band, listen to the entire experience, and listen to the magical Sufi singing, the piano playing, and the entire band on November 13th.
Well, you heard that, so I'm gonna put everything in the show notes, so you'll be able to click on the links and get your tickets so that you can attend the concert and at Lincoln Center in December. So if you have that information, I'll make sure I include that so to make it easy for everyone to go and buy the tickets.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You mentioned being an inspiration, and that's one of the things that this podcast talks about is women that are motivating and inspiring. How important is it, because you're a piano teacher,
Yes.
how important is inspiring them to follow their dream if they are musicians, if they're composers? How important is that to you?
It's very, very important to me because I feel like both inspiring people from a compositional point of view. I've had lots of women, especially Asian artists. I think one of them mentioned you're like the only Asian jazz artist who submitted work for consideration this year. A female jazz artist, and some people are very, very inspired. I've had a lot of women reach out to me, saying that thank you for blazing a trail, thank you for making me feel that it's, when you get married and have children, you have a certain expectation, and the expectation is not that you leave everything behind and go on tour with your band and perform like night after night and compose and perform. But that's really what I've wanted to do ever since I was a child. And I don't let images and stereotypes limit what I'm trying to do. And even that goes to the sound of what I'm creating, which is definitely new. We had a great write-up from All About Jazz recently on how this whole sound is very, very different, and how it's very similar to the exotic nature of Joe Beam's work in the 1960s, which also blazed new trail and forged new ground in the bossa nova era, which was amazing to receive. So I would like to inspire people in so many ways, also especially women composers, to take risks and find their own voices and not be afraid and ashamed of their heritage and their past. I think it's really, really important to do that. And then for the children, I teach a lot of children piano, everything from beginner's piano to advanced. It's so important to inspire them to have that confidence to play. So I recently became a Steinway partner, which is a huge honor. So Steinway approached me and said, would you like to be an educational partner? That's great, because then my students get to go to Steinway events and they get to perform in the Steinway auditorium, which is amazing. You know, a 5-year-old.
That's incredible.
Yeah, a 5-year-old having a chance to perform on the best pianos in the world in a fantastic auditorium, private auditorium, which is like Carnegie Hall. Really, it's the opportunity my piano teacher gave me when I was a child. So I'd like to pass it and pay it forward and, you know, give it to my students. I think it's very, very important. I think it's important for teachers and educators too. I have the greatest respect for educators. I think it's important for people to really realize that the buck stops with you. The buck does stop with you. You have to do what it takes to make the world and the future a better place. So I really do believe that, and that's part of why I'm doing what I do.
Since you are an inspiration, I want to find out who or what inspires you. Where do you get your inspiration?
I get it from a lot of my peers' work. I get it from a ton of the work that some of my composer friends are doing, the great classical pianists and the jazz pianists. I listen to a lot of Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, David Brubeck, and I listen to them hoping to be as good as them, if not better one day, and leave a legacy of recordings. Anything that has a potential to create beauty and making the world a better future inspires me. I'm inspired by activists and environmentalists and those who are working tirelessly to combat things like climate change. And I mean, all of those energies motivate me, because I get out of bed thinking this is wonderful. If we can all think like that, if we can all put our energies not towards negative situation like fighting with each other or besmirching each other, but more positive causes, we could definitely do great things.
Yeah, that is important. So you were a journalist as well. Tell us about that. Where did you work? Was that something that you did while you were on your way to Carnegie Hall?
Yeah, I've been writing a lot for various newspapers and magazines for over 10 years. I've won a lot of awards for that as well. I contribute to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Architectural Digest, and AARP, Condé Nast Traveler, a lot about travel. And I've been traveling since I was a kid as well. So yeah, I do a lot to find the news and then go where the story is. So it's a tricky balance. It's a fine balance because it's a lot of details, but I really love doing it. I love writing and I love, writing music. So both things. So it's been great fun doing what I'm doing to balance both.
Yeah, and then while you're traveling for music, I guess you can always write something about
Yeah.
your experience.
Yeah. So a lot of the times when I go on tour with my band, I end up turning it into like a travel story as well. So I end up reporting on the city that I'm going on tour to, which is a nice way of seeing the city from a slightly different perspective as a performer, and also reporting on it, which has been very nice, actually.
You were writing during the pandemic. You released songs and music on social media. Did you travel? Were you performing as well during the pandemic?
So a lot of the performances ended up being live streams. We actually did sell tickets to a fair number of live streams because obviously people couldn't go into shows in person. And so that was the amount of performing. And I was putting out a piece every day on social channels, but I was also recording in the studios. Once the studios opened up, my band and I recorded new albums in the studios to put out because studio albums are always fun to do, and it was something that we just needed to get the juices moving. I was busy composing during the pandemic. To be very honest with you, I've never written so much than I have during that time, because it was like all I had to do. I was like shut in my room with the piano. I'm like, what else am I going to do? Like, that's it. So I actually produced a lot of work. Book of Ragas Volume 2, which we're presenting at Carnegie Hall, was written during the pandemic. I also released 3 singles and about to release a lot more albums next year. So I know a lot of people were frustrated with the lockdown. I just tried to turn it into a creative purpose for me. So I was trying to forget about the absolute heart-wrenching situation that was going on outside. And I also did a fair amount of reporting because news was coming out every single day. Not so much about travel, but about how travel and travelers are adapting to the new normal. So I did a lot of reporting on those topics as well, because, all of a sudden you had these chronic travelers who couldn't go anywhere. And
Right.
so how were companies adapting to this? So I wrote a piece on virtual tours. It was really fun, like virtual tours of the Sistine Chapel, etc. So if you couldn't go to Italy, you could take virtual tours. I wrote a piece on virtual festivals that ran in the Wall Street Journal. So if you couldn't travel to a festival, there were some festivals coming to you. So there was actually a fair amount of reporting I did in addition to my composing during that time.
Yeah, that's great because a lot of people were bored. I mean, I
Yeah.
was not bored a single day during the pandemic while we were in lockdown. I was not bored a single day. I found
Right.
something to do every day.
Exactly.
You wrote during the pandemic. Was there a difference in the personality of the music? Was it the same as before? Or did it take on a different tone? Was it more somber?
Yes. So there's one track in the album, Raga Savari, which is a morning raga, which is very haunting. It's so haunting. It has very powerful lyrics. The lyrics are ghazals, you call them ghazals, devotional songs that cover the topic of love and loss. So there's one particular ghazal that was used for Raga Savari, which is the second track in my Ragas album that just debuted. It basically translates to, without you, my instrument ceases to make music. So it's a very sad topic of loss, and that inspired me to write these pieces that were, you can't escape the realities around you, and that is the truth. And I think a lot of us wanted to escape. A lot of us fled to the suburbs. A lot of us tried to find any amount of green we could. A lot of us listened to a lot of music. For me, it was the outpouring of music that helped me, but it was hard to miss what was going on outside. So yeah, so I think the album, there's definitely some heavy moments in them.
Now, you kind of touched on this already, but what advice can you give or do you have to offer to upcoming musicians and composers?
I would say something very similar to what Shakespeare's quote was, to thine own self be true, because it really is about being true to yourself. At the end of the day, your art is your art. And, I can't even tell you how many people were like, well, would just pat me on the back and say, "Oh, how nice you're doing what you're doing. How sweet." I mean, we've all been there, I'm sure. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, whatever. We'll see when it happens. And there's some people who have been super supportive to me and some people have been like absolutely blatantly dismissive, and that happens, I think, to everybody. And for every artist, and artists especially are sensitive people, and they have, while they may have a thick skin outside, they're very fragile and sensitive on the inside. And I would say, really honestly, at the end of the day, that you should not pay any attention to that kind of advice. It like literally just like erase it from your memory bank. It does not serve any purpose at all, except to hopefully inspire you to create and prove them wrong. I would say it's hard. We live in a society, and slowly the images of expectations and perceptions are changing, but we still, I think, live in a society that's very image driven, and it's like people are expected to do certain things in a certain way, and that is definitely changing. But I think that artists need to rise above that and, you know, have the courage to blaze a new path and a new trail. It definitely takes a lot of courage to put out your own voice and continue putting it out there, and despite what anything happens or what people are saying. But that's ultimately what makes me happy, and I know a lot of artists are the same way. That's ultimately what makes them happy as well, because nothing else really fulfilled me on a personal level.
What words of wisdom can you offer for us and people listening today?
I think that it's very hard. It was very hard for me. The hardest thing I've had to do was to love myself and love my output and love what I was doing. I think you're your own worst critic and your own worst enemy. And I think that if you have the courage to put your love out there and your voice, you will attract people who are meant to be in your life. And that is really the honest truth. I think that I've had to eliminate a lot of people from my life. Like eliminate, like as in I don't want to keep in touch with them because they don't get me, I don't get them, and that's fine. It's not a personal thing. I'm not mad at them. It's just that maybe they are meant to do other things. And I think it's very important to remember you can't please everybody, but it is actually really detrimental to your own health and well-being to try to be a pleaser to everybody. I think you're not going to end up happy. You're going to try to just running around and chasing tails, and in the end nobody really wins because you're in trying to do all things and be all things to all people. I knew that I was not going to be that mom who's going to, you know, be the, you know, at home mom and having the cakes ready for I have a 9-year-old daughter, for my daughter when she gets back from school. It's not happening. If I cook, it's going to be a miracle. I mean, really. It's like brownie day in my family. It's like, oh my God, Mom's just opened the kitchen and the pots and pans are coming out. Wow. This we gotta see. It's fine. I'm like, I'll deal with it. That's just who I am, and I've learned to embrace it and love it and accept it. And, you know, I see all my other mom friends being like, oh yeah, I baked that amazing flan the other day. The souffle came out so great, but I have to tell you the top wasn't that great. And I'm like, I don't understand what you guys are saying. I haven't baked a souffle in my life. I'm okay with that. It's okay. I was like, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And I think we get so caught up in comparing and just saying, and this is what you're supposed to be doing, that's what you're supposed to be doing. In the end, you know, everyone's spreading themselves so thin, trying to do everything and trying to be super mom. It's not. I realized a long time ago that was not going to happen for me. Mm-hmm. And I think that was wisdom. That was when I realized that was wisdom. Mm-hmm. Then I realized then I have to just be happy doing what makes me happy, and then others will be happy. So brownie day and souffle days are, you're not going to get that here, but if they are, they're probably purchased or imported from some local store.
And that's fine.
That's fine, but I am getting better. I have taken an initiative to be a better cook and a gardener and do all those things that are, important. And that is, I think, wisdom is really realizing who you are, loving that and accepting that, and saying it's okay. It's okay not to be a grade A student in every single aspect of life.
Yeah, that's really great advice to be yourself and just be happy with yourself, because even though you are a superwoman in so many aspects, there are certain things that you just have to say, hey, this is not good for my mental health. So be yourself.
Exactly. You've got to be yourself. And I think it's also important for people to realize that society can judge you really, really harshly, and that's going to happen anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
they are on their own journey, and how you have to realize everybody is on their own path and own journey, and that takes a lot of growing up and a lot of wisdom to acknowledge and accept that, because the immediate reaction you have is to flare up and to start getting resentful. And I think that's when I really started growing and coming into my own, is recognizing that everybody has a path and everybody's has a story, and maybe everyone's story doesn't always coincide at the same time that you expect them or you wanted to, but they're still traveling, they're still discovering, and that's what it's about.
Thank you so much, Charu, for being here with us today. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. And don't forget that she's going to be performing at Carnegie Hall on November 13th. So I'll make sure to include the links. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share the podcast. And follow me on social media. Follow Charu on social media as well. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me, Iris. It's just been a real pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, checking out the podcast. Thank you for inviting me into your space. And until next time, I hope you will continue to thrive, grow, and be kind to yourselves and be kind to others.